Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we make sense of modern parenting one real conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a mom of six, former teacher, and your trusted friend helping you cut through the noise of today's parenting overload. If you've ever felt like you're drowning in information, trying to do it all as a mom, business owner, or caregiver, you're not alone. On this show, we talk with experts, educators, and fellow moms who are reimagining what it means to raise kids while pursuing your own passions. Today, I'm joined by Michelle DeKeyser, founder of the Mama Genius Hub. Michelle is a mom of three, former educator, and now a visionary guide helping moms rediscover their purpose while raising thriving children. Her work bridges motherhood, entrepreneurship, and personal growth, all while honoring the chaos of the chaos and beauty of family life. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. Wow, it feels like a mouthful when you hear yourself, all those things about yourself.
I completely understand. And I think all of our guests have responded that way too. But you guys are all just so incredible. So I'm super excited to dive into the conversation today. I know that when we originally pre-met for this call, and we actually go back a couple of years even on some other mama-based stuff. So can you just give our listeners some context for who you are and your journey from a teacher and mom to founding Mama Genius Hub?
Well, you don't put the questions light, right?
Sorry.
Let's
Start off
just break it
strong.
all down for everyone, right? But we got to make a little bit light of it too.
Yeah.
So essentially what happened for me was we moved, and that's kind of what kind of stopped the whole teaching realm of it all. But then I started to stay home with the kids, and it wasn't necessary at first. At first, it wasn't quite a choice. So then I went back to work for 6 months during mid-school year. And when I was back with summer, all of a sudden you realize your salary was pretty much a wash with daycare. There really was no take home between the two. And I wasn't enjoying it at that point. And so it was let me stay home and let me figure out this whole stay at mom thing. But it was kind of one that you fell into. And I felt like a lot of my decisions, I kind of fell into them. And so roll it forward a little bit. We all hit COVID, right? The COVID.
Yes.
I feel like people either took it two ways. They really fell deep and lost themselves in it, or they figured a way to dive, climb out of it. And so I chose a way to climb out of it twofold. So we decided to not only on September 1st of 2020 homeschool our kids for a year, because at the time my father and brother-in-law had cancer, and just not knowing the ramifications of COVID and stuff, I just didn't want to put more ideas that we couldn't see them in place. And so on the same day, I decided, well, if I'm going to stay home with the kids, I got to figure out a way to take care of myself a little bit. Now, this is the first time I ever went into a big challenge like this and actually followed through it. It's called the Hard 75. And some of you in the audience may have heard of it. You do 2 exercises a day, 45 minutes. One has to be outside no matter the weather.
Wow.
Let me tell you, I've got soaked to death. You're reading, you're drinking a gallon of water, you're sticking to a day. The catcher is, though, is if you don't do one of those things, you're supposed to go back to day one. And so I did the 75 days and made it through. Mind you, during that 75 days, I also made it to Seattle, and we did have to say goodbye to my dad while I was there. But it was actually kind of grateful for being in that. It got me out of the house to go for those walks and force myself to do those things. And so when I came back, I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish out the year. And he also has 3 phases that take you through the rest of the year, 30 days, but they're broken up in the next 6 months or so. And those include 5-minute cold showers and talking to a stranger during COVID and things like that you didn't put yourself in. So let's just fast forward to day 25 of phase 3, 5 days away from the end of the year. I had my book open in my bed. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and I look around. You know what I realized I forgot to do? I didn't forget to take a cold shower. I didn't forget to do a random act of kindness. I didn't forget to talk to a stranger. I forgot to take my picture. They always warn you about that, because the reason why they have you take the pictures is because if you don't take them daily, you won't be able to see the progress over time. So it's kind of just a forced in habit. And I normally take it first thing in the morning. But of course that day I didn't. So I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I have this weird picture of me. I took it I wake up my husband and I tell him, he's like, what's the big deal? Just go take the picture now, you know? And so I go take the picture. And then the next day, I almost just gave up and said, it's over. I didn't complete it. I did finish out the 5 days. And then I almost felt like I needed that pivotal point of that was when I discovered I actually learned with the words, it really is about the journey, not the destination. Because it kind of made me wake up and realize, what had I just done over the last year? I actually lost 45 pounds. I had started reading again. I had changed my mindset. I'd actually started the idea of, that's when I really came to the idea of like, I wanted to start a business in my 40s. What does that look like? What does that mean? Like, it was a starting point of all of that, from that shift. And he even, Andy Fuseli even says, when you do this, you don't know where it's going to take you, but it will change the way you do things. And so that kind of led me into, not all people want to start that way, going into the personal development realm, or into figure out, essentially, when I look at personal development, it goes into a couple pieces of like, it's really about just how to get back into yourself and to trust yourself with your next move. Now, we can do it in all different ways, and we have different personalities and different ways of doing things. And that's why we need different teachers at different times, but essentially down to that. And so what I really wanted to do was, going through this, was create a platform for moms that could do it in 15-minute increments. It could do it on what we call mom time, because we are so darn busy. We do
Yes.
have all these things going here and there, and our attention it's like a rabbit hole. I mean, our attention's always skewed. Yet that is not an excuse. It's not an excuse to hide behind the busyness. It's not an excuse not to get started. Because what I realized is, once I got started, there was more time and space. But how do you get started? You get started 15 minutes by a time.
I love that too. And like 15 minutes seems manageable, right? Like I think when we were talking about it, oh yeah, you could do 15 minutes while you're like waiting for the pasta water to boil, right? Or like in the car line to pick up your kids, or um yeah, I love like the manageable piece of what you do. So how has your journey, like you talked about your personal transformation and everything too. So how has being a mom through all of this really helped shape the mission behind your work?
Well, I think it's kind of encompass how I want to raise them, but also how even bringing them into what I do, or explaining what I do at times. I mean, I will admit that sometimes I still haven't quite given all the back end of that my husband wants to know. But I do feel, as women, like for us, it's like that little flame, and growing it bigger and bigger till it's ready to be cast out. And that's why I want to provide that community for it. But for me with the kids, it was also, how much do I include? How much do I not? At first, sometimes they wanted to do shorts with me, or do things that help support growing moms. And all of a sudden, that age changed, and like, no, I'm like, fine, let me readjust what I'm doing. And when I've run festivals in the past, my youngest wanted to do like morning lives with me. Some days she did, some days she didn't. And so it's also how I incorporate in the business. But on another note, it was through the women's circles that I learned how to form, and have been part of other ones. It was really learning how to be seen, heard, and witnessed. But then now being able to take that to how I respond with them. So if I'm asking like, how was your day or something, or you can see they're upset, I'll just go sit next to, especially my little one, I'll just go sit next to her and just wait. She's like, why are you here? What do you want? And then the talking starts. But a lot of times we're so busy trying to figure out what's going on, we don't give the space to actually listen. And that really is the fundamental of communication and relationships, is really that listening part, and just being silent at times, to let that space, because those words are sometimes so hard to find. And for parents out there and moms listening out there, the key also is, when they're done talking, let the silence sit. That's usually when you jump in and say, oh, do you want me to call a parent? Do you want me to talk to a teacher? What can I do as mama bear to fix this situation? If you let the silence sit there first, they start thinking, and they'll keep talking. Maybe a minute later, next thing you know, halftime, they've solved the problem. They're like dismissing you without you having done a single thing. And I think that's really the huge fundamental difference that has really changed to me, of how I do things and respond. And just, even when the feelings come up, is admitting to myself or apologizing afterwards what happened with me, but then setting that example. Wow, it is like storming out there right now. Sorry, I got distracted because just started.
Oh no.
Um, but it's really about all of that, bringing all those pieces together. But the more that we actually listen, and here's the biggest part, is that when you are living and figuring out what your purpose is, you're no longer projecting onto your kids what their purpose might be. You're
Mm.
now open to the possibility of being a detective and allowing their strengths to come out, rather than saying, oh, you should go do this because I like doing this. And that's what happens a lot, is that we pigeonhole them based on, without maybe not even realizing it, but we project onto them things that we may not have succeeded in our own life, or things that we thought that we wanted, without even, a lot of times, even realizing it.
I love that perspective too of like modeling the behavior, right? Like we're both former teachers. And so I'm like, oh yeah, this is like the teaching part. Like as parents, we are like our child's first teacher, the teacher that they have for the longest amount of time. And so the impact that we can have on them by modeling like, okay, I'm going to do this, self-exploration work. I'm going to build a business or however it is, like even just like the little patterns of like, oh, one of the stories. So we homeschool our kids and, we were talking about revamping our homeschool and I was like, okay, every week now for the upcoming school year, we're going to either record a video or you're going to do a podcast because I just want you to talk about the things that you're learning. And like they're getting older, so they're doing research projects and things. And my 5-year-old, he's like, Mom, when am I going to record my podcast? Mom, when am I going to record my podcast? And it's like, because I've talked about how I get to talk to awesome people on the podcast and he's so excited about the opportunity to like put something out there for himself. And so I love that perspective of it can start with you. And as you do the work, they also, what a great example for them too, of like the creativity and all of the things. You don't have to be put into a box. And so I also want to come back to one of the analogies that you shared in our initial conversation, which was this pickle jar analogy. So can you talk through what does this mean for our listeners listening in today? Teach us what this is.
Before I talk about the pickle jar, though,
Sure.
first of all, though, I do have to use the word celebrate, and I have to celebrate you, Jessica, because the fact that you were just explaining how you homeschool 6 kids, you're doing this podcast, and that's just amazing. And so, like, I don't think we celebrate ourselves enough. So I just first want to stop and celebrate you for a moment and just
Well, thank you.
say I'm in awe.
I mean, we are all doing incredible things. I think like that's like the underlying truth of like motherhood is that we are our own worst critic and they are picking up so much of the greatness that we're doing, even if we're not like cognizant of it too, right? So,
So don't get mad at me for saying this, but pause
sure.
for a minute, don't justify, and just say thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Because I do it all the time too. It's all of a sudden like this, and then we don't receive the wordings. And so I think the more we train ourselves, and I feel like when I do the circles and things like that, it's really training your brain to think about those things. Because my first reaction to that too would be like how do I walk? How do I run away from that as fast as possible? Which actually leads me right into the pickle jar. We
Yeah.
are inside these jars, right? And the back of this label right here, which says positive pickles, but the back is, if you look at these eyeballs, that's what what we're seeing inside of it, right? And usually in the back is all those negative thoughts that are racing through our brains, and we can do that over and over again. And literally, you can see the eyes. We can't see that label from inside our brain. We just can't. It's not physically possible. And then we beat ourselves up because we can't see that label. And even especially like if you're a coach or you're a teacher, or like you're a reading teacher, you're like, why can't I teach my child to read? Part of that is because we are inside that jar and we need that outside perspective, objective perspective from other people to be able to help us read that, to actually give us the permission to retrain our brains. Because at times we're so much in the mush of all of it that we just can't. No matter how much we try, it's like you just need to say it out loud, be seen, heard, and then also you're like, oh, and it doesn't happen until that takes place. However, the hard part though is that requires vulnerability. That requires being authentic and coming out to them. And that can be so scary. And especially, I'll tell you, when I started down the personal development round, the moms around me weren't necessarily on board. I don't know if that's ever happened to you where you're trying to have these deeper conversations and we're just so used to the hi, how are you? I'm fine. And you go a little bit deeper and they're like, oh, I didn't really actually want to talk about that. And you get that feeling. And so I really just wanted to create a space and community where it was already set up to do that, because that is the hard part. And then the more you start to do it in a safe space, then you're able to take that risk and do it with your spouse or do it with your best friend that you live with in person, like those spaces. But it takes time to undo the layers of that. And I'm going to say, that doesn't mean you have to be vulnerable with everybody. This is
Mm,
where you start to learn who is it safe to be vulnerable with. And you play that little dance in small doses, not like, let me show everyone my bedroom, like where everything happens. You start in the kitchen, right? You start with the little details. You start with the little pieces. You only take the people you really trust to the sacred space of your space, of your bedroom. And you just think about that in houses as a metaphor in terms of just who do you let in. And that's where boundaries come in. It's just a choice. It doesn't mean be rude or put people. It's just how much of yourself do you actually share? That's really what a boundary is.
I love that visual like representation too, because like you also have like the threshold, right? Okay, are they even allowed inside the house? Or is it just like this conversation level at the surface of like, do I open the door and invite them in? Or do I open the door and say, hey, and oh, see you next time, you know, like bye. Or do you share a meal with them? Or do you like cook a meal with them, right? Like there's like that kind of vulnerability too, where okay, we're getting a little bit more intimate, we're sharing a meal, we're breaking bread. So I love that visualization that, you know, we can think of the listeners too, as we're thinking about those boundaries and where they kind of fall with different people. Um, you know, one of the things that you've created with Mama Genius is this community of moms. And so when you're working with moms, and you can either speak to, like your personal experience and the work that you do now, but why do you think that so many moms struggle with aligning their own goals with how they parent? Like if we can recognize like how we want to be, but then putting it into practice, where's that kind of disconnect coming from?
I think one of it comes back to the default settings that our brains are on, which is the fight, flight, or freeze, and the negative responses, right? So for me, a lot of times, though, when I thought I was having community and self care and getting out there into with other moms, it took me a while to realize what I was actually doing was sitting in a complaint fest.
Mm.
And that cycle of complaint where you might not even realize it, but what I started to realize was that my brain, instead of, I wasn't even feeling like there was anything I wanted to complain about, but then my brain wanting to belong, starts searching in my head, what can I complain about so that it fits with what everyone else is saying? I don't know if other people, if that's ever happened to you or you realize, and sometimes I feel like that happens with moms. So it really is about the situations and who you put yourself into and how, again, coming back to vulnerable, how much do you share? And the situations that you come to, and sometimes they just become, habits, and you've developed great relationships of what feels like good. And it's when you start to listen to your body. And for me, when I put myself into one of those situations, I start realizing that I would physically like feel anxious and keep my mouth shut when I was there. And it was everything that I wanted. I was with a group of friends, we're doing play dates, we're doing all these things, and it's so fun, but my body kept saying no. And that's a lot of times the things that we don't listen to. And then all of a sudden it's like Oprah puts it, the brick hitting you on the head, right? You can either listen to the feather or you're going to be getting knocked in the head and like you're physically sick or something happens. And that's when your body is responding to all of those things. And so what it starts to is finding the right people and deciding ahead of time, what kind of vision do you have? What type of people what kind of conversations do you want to have? How are you going to feel your cup full? We use that saying all the time, fill your cup first, fill your cup first, right? It's almost like, I've heard that a million times. But honestly, what does that mean to you? Does that mean deep conversations? Does that mean meditating? And a good way to look at that is when your cup is full and your kid comes home from a bad day, you're able to comfort them or be empathetic or something. But when your cup is not full, you're like, why do they have to be like this? Why is it this? And you can just tell that difference. And that's when you start noticing it could be low energy. It could not be eating. There's all kinds of reasons to why you would react instead of respond. But it's really looking at those situations and then noticing on the day that you were able to respond instead of react, what was different that day? And looking more at those things that you were doing and doing more of that. And a lot of times it does come down to the people that we hang out with, or again, when we feel that trust is violated, it's because we shared too much with the wrong person. And it comes down to who are we supposed to be vulnerable with? Because we all want connection and love. We're wired for it. We're wired to inspire each other. We're wired to connect with each other, but in a way that feels safe.
Yeah. I mean, I can speak from my own experience here. I'll throw in a quick story, but you know, when we go to the grocery store, even we get a ton of looks because there's 6 children with us, and you know, sometimes if it's just me or if it's just my husband, or even if we're all together, there's 8. We take up a lot of space in the aisle. You know, my kids are well behaved, I guess, by like society standards in that sense, but we get comments all the time. They're like, "Oh man, you have your hands full," or "Oh man, like." do you guys know how that happens? Like all of these people that just seem to like want to like put themselves into our like little life, that they understand us, right? Like we have 6 children. But I think, one of the things that I had to go through was when people would say those comments, like they just don't know what to say in the situation. They just want to make a comment, but it would be really hurtful of like, oh, do you think that I can't handle my children? Like, do you think that my kids are misbehaving and that is in some way reflecting me as a mom and how I run my house and the relationships that I have with them? Like they're projecting whatever they're feeling onto me and my family. And so one of the things that I had to start doing was, instead of falling into that kind of like, I felt like it was like a trap where I was like, oh, now I have to complain about some element of being a mom in order to connect with them, which I don't. Again, that boundary, right? Like we're passing in the grocery store. But I started to rewrite that as like, yes, our hands and our hearts are so full. We are so blessed. And then I just carry on, because then I don't even like let it even sink into my heart anymore of like that they're doing any sort of feeling or, projecting whatever they're feeling onto us. Is just like, yeah, no, we are so very fortunate. Our children are a true blessing to us and we carry on. So I love that perspective though, too, of like what you mentioned of, it is about those social settings and also like equipping yourself with those tools to navigate if there is feelings of negativity. You're like, this isn't rubbing me the right way. Like maybe I shouldn't be as vulnerable with these people. Like maybe they're not used to seeing a big family. I don't need to go into the whole story in the middle of a grocery store. So thank you so much for for bringing that up.
Want to put a little bit of the brain work behind what we were just talking about, because one of the, and I keep getting the number wrong. It's 3 or 4 million. It's one of the two, but either it's a really big number, right? But at any given second, that's how much is coming into our unconscious mind. Is that much? Let's say 4 million bits of information is coming into our unconscious mind. Now, our conscious mind is only picking up 144 toothpicks from that when you think about that, right? 4 million, and our conscious mind is taking 144. Now, I love how you just changed that perspective, because when you change the toothpicks that are coming in and change that perspective from that 4 million, now you're able to get a much better 144. But then when you have that negative perspective, well, your brain's going to take in the negative 144. So the more that you change what your subconscious mind's bringing, because your subconscious is bringing it all in. It can see everything, right? It sees everything in front of us, but then for the sake of our sanity, right, our conscious mind is only going to process some of it. And so it's up to you to have that, when you start changing those perspectives and changing those stories, you're now changing the connection and the communication between the two. And that's where it really comes in key. And whenever people say, well, personal development doesn't mean this or that, well, it really does. It is changing the brain waves and the synapse inside when we start making and doing some of those processes, doing some of that meditation, doing some of those things to actually change the synapse. So you're taking in a better 144. So it's up to you to decide. You're only going to get 144. That's up to you. Which 144 do you want to get? Because our brains are wired for the negativity, for the fight, flight, or freeze. It's until you start to change it.
That's incredibly powerful, but also like a little alarming. Like, oh wow, I didn't realize that there was that much going on. And it really is about the way that we think about things and the approach of like what we're actually going to continue to think and the way that we're going to continue to approach things. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier in the conversation was this idea of like projecting onto our kids or like being this detective. So I want to dive into a couple pieces of that a little bit. So what does this mean, I guess, in practice? And then how do we kind of help identify our children's or encourage our children's passions through that process?
What I've noticed a lot of times is when especially like when we'll get the comment like, why does your daughter, why is she doing swim so much? And it's like, it's because it was something I ended up finding for her by complete chance. Not my husband and I are not swimmers. We're not in the I mean, there's like cousins and left and right, like all kinds of people on the swim side, right? Like we had none of that. But it was because I was just determined I wanted her to know how to swim. And so I kept looking for the right lessons. And then when she got to those right lessons, they're the ones that encouraged her to go to swim team, not me. And so I was more afraid of like, for me, it was a fear of like her like drowning and stuff. So it was just like, let me get you the basics. So my son, both my daughters are on a swim team now, but my son just done with lessons. Cool. No problem. It's all I was asking. Right. So, but what it comes down to is a lot of times we will say they need to do this or they need to keep going, even though they're not showing any interest anymore. My girls played soccer for 1 season each, or my middle said she played a little bit more, but it was as soon as they were done, my thing with them is if you decide that you want to try something, you need to try it till the end of that commitment. So if it's one season, try it for one season. If you're done, you're done. But you need to give it a full, you're committing, when you make that decision, you're committing for this amount of time. What I see is a lot of parents and stuff is like, and it's become so competitive now. It's like at a certain age, it's like, well, you should already know what your sport is. You should already, and that does become problematic, especially with finances and things like that. Cause these club sports are not cheap at all. And so, and if the kid's not enjoying it, that makes it even worse. And I was just like, I can see the burnt out in my daughter right now. And I was like, are you sure you want to do summer? And she wasn't really sure. And it was just, when you see those moments, that's where the detective comes in, is really determining what are the things they like doing, how much are they doing, and like, is it something they actually can keep sustaining? And so when you're cognizant to those kinds of questions, looking at them rather than, oh, I thought she should have been a dancer. Like, I wish she would have been a dancer, and or that's something you did, or whatever it is, but that's not their natural inclination. And I do agree with letting them try variety and see, like my daughter showed a little bit of interest in gymnastics. That lasted about a year. We moved on, right? But to give them that opportunity, and I know sometimes it is a little bit harder because those clubs come in place, but that's where the detective part really comes in, is really honing in. And I do like to say a lot of times we focus on the stuff they're not good on. And so we're looking for a math tutor, we're looking for an English tutor, but we're never looking all the time for a tutor of the things that they are good at. Yeah, and not that they don't need help with some of the things and they might need to get better at sports, but always try to find the things that they're good at and find a tutor for that. Let them excel in the things that they're enjoying doing as well. Granted, if they need to get their math grades up, whatever, that's a different story, but it's not that we only look for the things that they're bad at. Let's focus on the genius in them, because all of our kids have a genius inside of them. It's a matter of unlocking that. And the same thing goes for us, which is why I created the Mama Genius Hub, because it is about unlocking the genius inside of you. And as you're doing that, as you're getting the tools to do that, you're now passing them on to your children and bridging that gap. I mean, I can tell you my 12-year-old is so much more confident than I probably even to this day, she's more confident than I am in herself. My youngest is a little bit more sensitive, but you can see the light, and I can see her working through the feelings more because of these conversations. And my son, he says he wants to start a podcast. He actually did a couple interviews. Hasn't happened. I just offer support. I'm like, I'm not going to force. And then he wants to grow microgreens. I'm going to support. Now he's moved on to his 50 merit badges he has for Boy Scouts, and he's working towards Eagle. He did go with me last year to Africa, though. We were able to raise funds, and we went on a mission trip with another group of entrepreneurs, and we were working in the schools down there. And actually, you can see the parenting owner's manual behind me. He's published in there as well. So he's there holding up the book, telling these Tanzanian kids, like, I'm in this book, you have a chance too. And they actually they reissued it, and they have a chapter of Voices of Tanzania in there as well. And so he was able to experience that, which wouldn't have happened if I didn't go down this route. And so the key of what I'm really trying to say is, when you are, no matter how hard it is, you just keep plugging along on your route of your journey, you're able to see differently what is helping them guide them to see their journey. Not forcing it, you're able to, like, oh, that makes sense. That's what let's try this out. Do you want to do more of that? Versus saying you need to do this. And you can feel the difference when the energy's coming out of it. And even look at the activities that your kids are doing. Are they doing it because they want to do it, or are they doing it because you told them they need to do it? And there is a difference between the two.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have like so many other thoughts too about all of this. Like when you were talking about the sports, like let's say that they play a sport for a few years, right? And that you've invested so much time and money and effort into like getting them the best training for whatever sport that is. I feel like, okay, I'll speak for myself then. Like I would project and be like, oh my gosh, well, no, we've spent the last 3 years doing this. Like you're gonna play, or you're gonna at least try out for like the travel team or whatever. But then at the same time, like nobody's having a good time. If they need a break, they need a break. Like there's things as adults that we do like religiously. And sometimes it's like, okay, hold on. I need to take a couple months and just like take a step back from it and maybe try something new. And so I love that perspective of like it can even be in that sort of mentality of feeling like you're projecting just based on the value that you think that activity comes from. I mean, another thing that you mentioned too is like awakening like your child's genius and how we all have that within us and like leading from curiosity. Um, and like the story of your son too, of like he jumps from one thing to the next, but then you're also still supportive of all of the things, right? And like I bet you're learning as a mom, like, oh yeah, I know more about microgreens than I ever knew. Like,
I can
there's
eat them. So I'm just gonna say I like when he makes them.
there you go. Like they also, I think like that's one of the beautiful things that I've experienced as a mom is just kind of like living the world through their eyes too, and like everything just seems so new and fresh. And so there's like that little bit of like freeing of like, oh, I don't have to have it all figured out for them. We're teaching them lessons too in the meantime of like making sure you play through the season or whatever the commitment is to your point too. And um, so I just love like the connection of when you're doing the work for yourself, your kids are also going through the work, but then also you can learn so much from the kids' work that they're doing that you can then put into practice. So I know when we initially connected, we had talked a little bit about like the deficits, like we're a deficit focused society, right? Like if your child is struggling with math, we're going to invest so much time into getting you a math tutor because you have to get your math grade up, but they may be excelling and are very interested in music. And so like, if we were to invest the time and money into their gift, how much would that actually mean to them more than trying to fix their, geometry or algebra grade or whatever it could be that they may end up never even using. But music could also be part of their personality and their, hobbies for years to come and maybe even a career. Um, so I guess like walk us through like let's talk about that. Like the deficit focused society versus like this gift focused kind of rewiring of the brain, right? To keep our mind open towards what's actually possible for them.
I mean, as we said, we're both. I'm also a former teacher, homeschooled my kids as well, and I was dead set. I'm saying this out loud. I haven't really said nothing to my husband, but I was like, I don't necessarily believe the kids have to go to college anymore. I used to like be so set they have to do this, right? And it's just being a little bit more open minded. Not that if the kid's capable and wants to, that's a different story. But there's not all kids that want to and they feel pigeonholed into it, and then ended up being in debt from the college bills and all these things that didn't necessarily help them move forward. And let's be honest, how many of us actually use our majors today?
Right.
I mean, it's a time for learning, right? And that's great, but making those choices, knowing that, especially with prices going up and things like that, it's really making those decisions. But we're so focused a lot of times on what's lacking, and we do that with everything. Even in terms of our vision, if you ask someone what do you want, half the time they'll start listing the things they don't want. They won't even mention the things that, I'm going to admit I'm guilty of that too. As many, many times, it is really hard to just say, I want this. I desire this. Just using those statements sounds selfish, sounds like it's hard. And it's awesome. Well, I know I don't want this for dinner. I mean, it's funny because, you always ask the question, the husband's always, what do you want for dinner? And then the wife's, what do you pick? And that's not true. They're supposed to read your mind, figure out exactly what you want to eat at that moment. And then when they don't get it right, then they get in trouble. Let's be honest here. But the same thing comes when we're talking to ourselves about our wants and desires. And so we'll be so easy to say, oh, I don't want this. But our subconscious mind and the universe does not know not. So the more you say you don't want something, I'll be honest. I said, I don't want to be a high school teacher. What do you think I ended up doing? It's a long roundabout story to how it happened, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I don't want to teach. And then I'm like, oh, I could do elementary. Let me go get my teaching credential. Right? Like, because you focus on those things. And so it really is true. It's as simple as what we focus on. And it's hard to answer that question, what I want, what I desire. So the first thing to do that is really just leave it blank. Just start asking it more and more, because what it does is, let's get back to the brain, is the RAS. What is that? The reticular activating system. The thing that everyone knows, everyone knows what it is when you say you buy a new car and you see that car everywhere.
Yes.
That is the activation of it. So whatever you want to activate, you can activate. So you don't necessarily have to have the answers to any of this at all, but you have to start asking the questions, start the curiosity. What do I want? What do I like? And stop asking the nuts.
Mm.
Just leave them off the table and just leave a piece of paper, leave a blank note on your phone. Just let it sit and your subconscious mind will start feeding you stuff randomly. You'll probably be driving when you get the next answer, right? Or you'll see a restaurant that you're like, oh, I should have told him I wanted to go there. And you just start keeping note of those things. That's how you get your list. It doesn't have to be, let me pigeonhole myself and say, I have to do it right now. And as I'm saying this right now, I'm reminding myself because you know what? I'm in my own pickle jar. And it is a lot easier for me to tell you what to do, Jessica, than it is to tell myself at times. And so these are all constant reminders for ourselves, but it really does come back to always activating the RAS. And how do we do that? Simply through curiosity. So at the age of 3, kids are asking about 100 questions or more a day, right? I'm sure some of us with those 3-year-olds, we're just like, can they stop now, please? I'm tired. But when they get to age 11, between school and everything, we're down to 2% of kids asking questions. By age 22, no one's asking questions anymore, right? That's where curiosity comes from, is asking those questions again. All of a sudden, it's like, if I don't know the right answer, I shouldn't be asking a question. That we get into that mentality. Again, back to the deficit of having to know the right thing all the time, the perfectionism in all of us. And so there is no room for curiosity when you're like, oh, me telling your brain, yeah, I don't know, that's too hard. I can't go from 0 to perfect, so I can't do it. Like for me, I can actually see in the corner of my room is the guitar that I want to play. And I kept saying, I'm going to do 10 minutes a day. It's been 2 years. My daughter broke the string and I haven't had it fixed yet. So those are the reminders, and it sits there as I will get back to it. And it is, but it's also then what's important right now. And that isn't at this particular time, but I know that's probably something when the kids are a little bit on their own more and they're a little bit bigger. Yeah, I'm leaving it there as a reminder of something I'm going to get to. And so it's you making your list of what are the things you want to do. Make that list. It doesn't have to be done in a day. Just keep adding to it when you start using that curiosity. And like you said before, because we keep using that word, it comes back to that one word is we want the answer now. But if we don't open up the curiosity, we're not going to get any of the answers. And the answers have to come from here. They're going to be influenced by what you see out here. But then that influence then is what actually aligns with me in here. And that is also the thing with business as well, is we get all the, especially entrepreneurship, we get all the steps. Like this made this person $1 million. And when you try their exact steps, I guarantee you it's probably not going to work for you. Now, if you take some of those steps and you mix it with some of this and you mix it with some of that, because that feels right to you, because you might not. I wasn't the blogger. I was more of a podcaster. I learned that after a year of trying to blog, more than a year actually. But it's learning those things that your innate genius. And because that was someone's innate genius, some of those steps might work for you, but we're all different people and we take decisions and steps forward a little bit differently. We have different levels of genius in us. So like video might be good, blogging might be good for someone else. But it's a matter of deciphering that based on your intuition and what feels right to you. And your kids figure out that too.
Yeah, I love this. And I think so at the end of each of our episodes, we have a little segment called Ask Emmy, where actual LaunchFamily participants can write in. And one of the questions that was written in, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to ask Michelle because it's exactly what you were just talking about. So one of the questions written in was, I want to start something for me, but I feel guilty. How do I balance like my purpose with parenting?
So I asked that by asking another question. Because I would ask myself that question first, is what is it about feeling guilty? What the question never dawned on me is, what is it going to bring to my family for doing it? My son got to go to Africa. They're watching me do a podcast. They're watching me create something. And yes, there's friction. Yes, there's times that things have to give. But ask the question, what is it going to bring your family? And I just never even asked that. And then now I'm like, and even the days when I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm just ready to give up. Like, I'm not making it. Things aren't going right. And that's a reminder. And even sometimes my son I think my son is my biggest cheerleader. And he'll just ask random questions. So how's the hub going? Or how many new members did you get? Or this, and he's just like, and he'll just ask these random questions. And it's funny is I'll answer his and not necessarily my husband. But they are watching you. And so you are being the role model for them living out their genius. Because let's be honest, if as a mom, You give up your role of your dreams or whatever you want. Do you want that for your daughter? Because that's what you're insinuating, is that, when she becomes a mom, that's the same cycle, the martyrdom cycle that we've been perpetually putting into place is, but look at your daughter. You're like, you want her dreams to come true. Well, they're only going to come true if you start showing her how that happens in motherhood, happens in adulthood, that we don't just have dreams as children.
So true. Did we all grow up envisioning that we would work in a cubicle somewhere? Like, I don't think that I've ever heard that as a teacher. I taught kinder through second, and it's like, oh, I want to be a police officer. I want to do this. I want to help people, right? At whatever capacity it could be. What a great reminder, too, of like the impact that we have by building our own thing. It is that connection to purpose. One of the businesses that I had worked on before and co-founded and all of those things, we actually just started winding down business operations for that. And so I'm going through like this self-discovery right now of like, okay, well, what is next? Like I could go back to teaching, I could go back to the classroom. Maybe I could be a stay-at-home mom if financially that works out and, however the intricacies are. But also like this idea of being an entrepreneur and having my own business allows me to be with my kids. And ultimately, like that is my purpose. Like I feel like I would love to be with my kids all day long. And then also building a business that allows me to do that is alignment. So any way that I show up is, doing what's best for them too in that case and that scenario. And it is really freeing, but also overwhelming to your point too of like, okay, it can start with a question and then you go down a rabbit hole. It's like, okay, I'm not even gonna start because I can't do it perfect from day one, right? Um, so I'm just so grateful for this kind of perspective. Any lasting thoughts that you
Well,
want
I have one more thing to add to that question
to
as
share?
well. What I've seen from a lot of moms who become empty nesters.
Mm,
All of a sudden, they have a huge identity shift crisis as well, because what do you do once the kids are out? That's why, honestly, when I was looking at this, my target audience or thinking about that was elementary age moms, because you start to have those pockets of time after survival mode. And you start to wonder as you're doing the dishes and you start crying, you're like, is this it? Because you feel that's when you start feeling like there's something more in you. There is more purpose in you. And when you do have that calling, that's why I like to say is calling people forth or calling people inwards to that as well. It, but that's keeps us from having that shift later, and then also being that role model to what it's like, because if we wait until they're gone, we've set that up and then it's a whole new shift. And so it's figuring that out, and you don't have to do it all at once. And that is the other thing I was going to say to you, Jessica, is it is about community. And us as women, I don't know if it was society, what put on us, or we did used to be hunting. We were the gatherers. We gathered in groups. We washed clothes by the river together, talking, doing these things. And now we've conditioned ourselves to be in our own little boxes, either it's a car, a house, like say hi to your neighbor. What, they want to talk to me? No.
yeah.
And we've lost that ability to connect without feeling, with feeling safe. And the other aspect is with, the sisterhood wound of women where we had been pinned against each other as this perpetual empty glass ceiling, right? With only so many people can get to the top. Well, that's in the masculine man, CEO, CFO, whatever CEO positions, right? With the Fortune 500s and all of that. That's where entrepreneurship really does come into place, because it is a place where there isn't competition. There's 8 billion people in this world. And I love how Kathy Heller puts it. You only need 1,000 raving fans to make a million. And when you think about those numbers, you're not competing against your sister. You're supporting each other so that you all have the life that you want for your families, and that you can support each other and feel alive, because it's not about the money. I mean, it is at times, but it's really what we're all looking for, is that feeling of connectedness, that feeling of aliveness, a feeling like we are doing more, feeling that soul calling, whatever that is for you. It could be writing a book. It could be starting a program at your kid's school. It could be anything that you feel alive doing. That's what we're actually looking for. And for women, I'm going to be honest, we do it in community, which is why I started the hub, because it is about us connecting and being seen, heard, and witnessed and vulnerable in a safe space so that you're able to be authentic and come out of your shell and figure out, who am I? Because when you ask that question, that's hard till you've actually taken the space and time. And so I like to say, when we do it together like that, it's a personal development doing a lot in a fun manner, because we're doing the deep work, but we're laughing, we're crying, we're doing all the emotions together because there's no judgment in it. And that is the beauty of us as women, creating these environments that are self-sustaining, and this entrepreneurship that's supporting our kids to learn and be their genius, and then being able to be home with them and being supportive of all of that. I think that answered the question. I don't know.
I love all of this, Michelle. Oh my gosh. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to have this inspiring conversation with us today. The work that you do really reminds us that parenting doesn't mean that we have to give up our dreams, but in fact, like the very path to actually realizing what they actually are. And that when we live aligned, we raise kids who are empowered to also do the same. To learn more about, to our listeners, to learn more about Michelle's work, the Mama Genius Hub, and her upcoming resources, be sure to check out the show notes for all of the links. Until next time, remember that parenting doesn't have to mean going at it alone. There is power in community, and your genius is worth discovering for you and your kids.